Be a friend to yourself, they say. But why stay friends if you can fall in love with yourself? Self-love has become a trend. Social media is full of advice to put yourself first, yet the moment someone genuinely respects their own time, goals, or boundaries, they're called selfish, as if that was a bad thing. That's why it's worth rethinking what it truly means to have a loving relationship with yourself. Let's talk about how to build and sustain a sense of self-awe. Before you start dating someone, you usually become friends with the person. You get to know each other, find some common ground, evaluate their appearance, often humor as well. But the most important thing is that you accept them as they are. This is the first stage of any relationship. You decide that this person is cool enough to accept them into your life. So what does that mean to be your own friend? The answer suggests itself. To accept yourself as you are. That means to acknowledge both your strong and weak sides, looking at yourself objectively and valuing your uniqueness. However, there is always a danger of confusing self-acceptance with justification of destructive behavior. That's why your main task as a friend is also to protect yourself from self-ruining habits. If you understand that your current actions, it may be indulging in unhealthy foods and substances, scrolling through social media for days on end, procrastinating and not getting anything done, allowing stress and guilt to build up, and so on. When these actions lead you into a black hole, it's time for self-reflection and restructuring of your approach. Anything that leads to self-guilt, health issues, and lowering your self-esteem cannot be accepted as I'm just like that because the end result is bad for you. These behavioral patterns and coping mechanisms must be acknowledged as a fact of reality, as a temporary fact of reality. But you shouldn't be resigned to it. You can change habits and traits over time. Once you've learned to treat yourself as a true friend, respecting, supporting, and protecting your well-being, the next step is deeper. Can you admire yourself? The first thing to fall in love and admire yourself is defining who you are in a deeper sense than just learning your interests or loving your appearance. For instance, what makes you fall in love with someone? That happens when you admire who the person they are. Speaking more specifically, you notice and assess the values they represent in their actions. Whether your perception is right or wrong is another story, but either way, you build an image of them in your mind you start to adore. Behind each of one's choices, there is a deeper value. Though you might not always see it directly, it's always there. Don't believe me? Let's see some common examples. I like how kind he is towards others. You value benevolence and empathy. I adore his attitude towards his work and family. You value integrity and commitment. Oh, he always keeps his promises. You value reliability and responsibility. She plans her day and actually follows through. You value productiveness. She always laughs at herself instead of playing the victim. You value emotional resilience and sense of humor. He leaves work earlier to see me even though he has a bunch of stuff to do. You value the ability to set priorities and adhere to them. And countless other examples that show how every act we admire reflects our underlying value. So when you fall in love, you're not just drawn to random habits or gestures, you're responding to the hierarchy of values a person expresses through daily choices and actions. Their lifestyle, humor, taste, priorities, etc. are all reflections of what they hold as sacred. To fall in love with yourself, you should identify your core values and adhere to them in any decision you make. When you act on them consistently, you transform from just your friends to the one who admires and is proud of yourself. This is called rational self-love, the kind grounded in reality, your thinking efforts to identify your guiding values and your daily commitment to them. Why is it so crucial that your love is rational instead of made up or unconditional? Made up self-love is the illusion of you loving yourself. When you try to persuade yourself that you are okay with your relationships, work, discipline, food habits, anything, deep down knowing that it's not true, but evading efforts to change the situation, it creates a so-called self-love bubble that will explode one day. It will explode in a hysteria of facing the fact that actually you don't love yourself. You're not satisfied with your choices, and all that time you are trying to persuade yourself of the opposite of the truth. The unconditional love is one of my favorite misconceptions. I hold the stance that there is no unconditional love in this world at all. There is always at least one condition why you love or admire someone. Frequently, I hear about unconditional self-love from people with a very low self-esteem. They acknowledge that they want to change, but because they heard somewhere that one should love oneself unconditionally, they are prone to drop the attempt to get better. As a result, their self-esteem remains low, they still aren't satisfied with themselves and their life, but now they have a justification. I must learn to love myself unconditionally. Some psychologists said that. But what's the point? If you think about it rationally, unconditional love, even toward yourself, makes no sense, because love is always a response to values. Unconditional self-love would mean that nothing you do, think, or become could ever make you lose your self-respect. Not because you love yourself, but because you don't have any self-respect. It just doesn't have anything as a foundation to be built on, apart from procrastination, constant justifications and rationalizations, and comforting claims about unconditional self-love. That wouldn't be love, but self-pity disguised as compassion at most. In Atlas Shrugged, the philosophical novel by Ayn Rand, one of the characters, Jim Taggart, says, I don't want to be loved for anything. I want to be loved for myself. Not for anything I do or have or say, just for myself. Not for my body or mind or words or works or actions. And his wife, Cheryl, replies, but then, what is yourself? In your own friend means recognizing when your thoughts, habits, or excuses work against your well-being and having the courage to correct them. While falling in love with yourself requires a bit more. It requires acting in accordance with your mind, your values, and your vision of what your dream life is. The goal isn't to love yourself no matter what, but to live in such a way that your love for yourself is earned, honest, and stable. To start practicing this, list 3 choices you've made recently that reflect your core values, and 3 choices where your actions didn't. And ask yourself, would I respect the person doing so? Can I fall in love with the person I've been recently? In the next video, I'll talk about the daily practice of loving yourself apart from adhering to your values. In particular, I will touch upon self-talk, examining your inner voice and how not to become your own enemy and critique while striving for improvement.